Hey, you guys, let's do some more multitasking, storytelling, which of course includes coloring. Here's a gum I'm chewing today, by the way. Big League Chew, ground ball grape, bubble gum. I need to do part 2 of our love story. My husband and my love story that started in December of 1981. And this summer, 2019, we'll be married 37 years. I can't believe it. So, somewhere there's a part 1, like our love story part 1. And when I find the link, I will post it in the description box below. But I do believe I left off like right after our first date. It was my Cinderella night. My husband took me to a military ball for my first date. Anyways, it was just wonderful. So it all started in December of 81. And I was 21 years old. Let me see. Yeah, 21, soon to be 22. And my husband was like 42. He's 21 or 22 years older than myself. But a reminder that age is just a number, because he's always just been young at heart, and we never noticed the age difference. So anyways, I have a few items here, vintage items, and I've showed them before, but I'd like to show them again. When I first met my husband in summer of 1976, I remember the first time I saw him. He was our neighbor. I was in high school. He and his wife and his 2 young kids, when they moved in next to us. He smoked a pipe his whole life, I guess, since college, his college days. This was just one of his many pipes. And he always smoked Captain Black. Somewhere we have the Captain Black tins. And there were like 2 or 3 different bags. There was this gold bag. I believe there was a white one and a black one. But it was always Captain Black. So I remember the first time I had seen him, I happened to be looking out my bedroom window, and he pulled in into his driveway, and he got out with like a 3-piece checkered suit. Remember, this was 1976. It was like a brown and orange checkered suit with his briefcase and his brown leather boots. Oh my goodness. Anyways, so he smoked a pipe like our whole life until we had kids, and it just wasn't healthy, the smoke. And then his throat started bothering him, and he could see that smokers were getting it was getting just difficult for smokers to go places and smoke. So somewhere in the early 90s, days, I believe. He just quit cold turkey. But anyways, lovely memory of early days with each other. So he was always a outdoors person. Even to this day, he's never had a gym membership. He always said that had he not taken his career path that he took, he would want to be a ranger, specifically up in Yellowstone area. And he said in the winter. I couldn't believe that, but yeah. Here's the Old National Park book from 1969. We just kind of always had the same interests. Anyways. And here's a set of keys. This is hysterical. This is like a set of keys from here, and the reason I can date it is there's two old safety deposit box keys in here. When we first got married, got our first home, and that was another one of the first things we got. So that was in 1982. So he hasn't used this key ring for I don't know how long. I guess we could call that vintage. So anyways, we get back from our first date. That was on February. Oh, here's another thing. I forgot to show you this. When I first met him in 1976, he was in the National Guard Reserves, and he was a major. And this was his clipboard. And he eventually ended up just keeping it in the house, and he would use it for any project he had. He said, "Where's my clipboard? Where's my clipboard?" So this clipboard has been with my husband even longer than I have been. So we go on our first date, a military ball, February 13th, Valentine's weekend, 1982. Oops, it's upside down. Then, we had a wonderful time. Life goes on, and it wasn't until like the second week of March that we reconnected, and I invited him to Santa Barbara for his birthday, and I knew he always had Sundays and Wednesdays off, and invited him up to Santa Barbara for his birthday. We could have fun birthday dinner, and I'll never forget. And at the time, I worked the night shift from like 7:30 at night till 7:30 at night, or like 4:30 in the morning, something like that. And so I invited him up, and he was all happy, and he said, "Well, why not breakfast?" I said, "Well, okay." So that was going to be an early day for me, getting home at 4 or 5 in the morning and getting some sleep when he wanted to be over for breakfast no later than 9. But I made it work because we always have fun together. Now, supposedly, as the story goes, and he still says this today, that was the day he fell madly deep in love with me on our second date. Now, we had known each other, obviously, I already mentioned this several times, since 1976, and just always enjoyed each other. He just thought I was just a fun young person, I thought he was a fun older person, but young at heart. So he, on a Wednesday, he arrived in Santa Barbara, and we went out for breakfast on State Street, a restaurant called Eggs and Things. I'm not sure if it's still there, but every once in a while I see a restaurant, Eggs and Things, and I wonder, was that a chain, or did people just pick up that name for a breakfast spot on their own? But it was, anybody familiar with Santa Barbara State Street back in 1982? Yeah, March of 1982. It was Eggs and Things on State Street. And so we had breakfast. I wanted to pay. We had a little fight at the breakfast table because we both kind of grabbed. And I spilled the water all over the table, and he laughed. And that was the beginning of our day. We did it all day. We started at breakfast. We cruised Santa Barbara State Street. We even went into some photo place where you get those old-time photo pictures, and he did like a Civil War. And I had one of those beautiful old fancy like Civil War dresses and a hat. We had our best time. Did that. We walked down to the harbor. I had drinks at a harbor restaurant. Sunset time, we went to see a movie, which I believe we saw 2 movies. Chariots of Fire, that one on Golden Pond. So I'll have to do research and see what movie came out first, because I can't recall which one we saw first. I have a hunch it may have been on Golden Pond, but I could be wrong. So, or we could have just seen them both the same day. Like, I want to say we saw it on Golden Pond in the afternoon. Then, because we happened to see it on the theater sign, State Street. Then we went to Harbor Restaurant for drinks on the pier, and then went to Chariots of Fire that night. But like I said, I'll have to check and see if they were both out there on that same day, March of 82. So he said at the end of that day, now he'd never told me, never said a word. This was like the not quite the second week of March. So he says he knew that day he was in love with me, and I didn't know anything. So we dated and kept in touch. He was at the time living in Simi Valley. I was in Santa Barbara, and by March 24th, a couple weeks later, we were engaged. And my parents had a fit. My parents completely disowned me for a few years, but everything's okay now. They just didn't understand, and I don't blame them. And so how we got engaged is kind of a cute little story. He happened to be in Santa Barbara. We were having another fun, awesome day, and I knew he had to go to work early the next morning, so I'm trying to scoot him home. So you have to go, you're going to be late, you have to be at work in the morning. And he worked in the valley, San Fernando Valley. So that would have been, if he would have driven from Santa Barbara, would have been a couple hours early in the morning. So he kept saying how he just like being away from me. I said, I know. And I'm kind of reminding him that we're going to do something on the weekend. We're going to have some kind of weekend plans. He said, I know, but I'm just, it's terrible when I'm not near you. So he's telling me how terrible it is when he's not near me. I say, I know. And then he says, why don't you come and live with me? Mind you, I was renting in Santa Barbara, and he had a beautiful brand new home, a few years old, swimming pool, horses, the whole deal, right? That's how I met him. He lived next door to my parents and had since been divorced and was living there alone for a few years. And so he says, just why don't you come live with me? I said, what? Just exactly like that. I know. I was like that's not gonna happen. I specifically said, what? And I never had lived with anybody. I went straight from living with my parents' house to living alone. And I said, I'm not living with anybody until I get married. That's not happening. And before I could even finish what I was saying, he says, this is the best love story ever. He says, well, then marry me. And I said, okay. And I forgot to say, I finished my thought. He was laying on my bedroom floor. I was laying on my side next to him, like with my head propped up with my hand. My arm was on my elbow. I was just kind of like rubbing his chest and holding his hand. So there we were. And I know Senator said that's not happening. He says, what? Till I get married. He says, well, then marry me. I said, okay. And we just laid there for like a few seconds. And he had a big smile on his face. I had a big smile on my face. We just knew it was right. And I know that's not like the everyday love story for everybody, but because we had known each other and we realized we always liked each other, there was like no fear or questions or wondering. And so we get kind of like a kick every time we share that story. And he remembers saying when he asked me to come live with him, and I said, no, that's not happening. I remember him saying how his whole chest sunk. He was just sick that I wasn't just gonna, jump at the offer. And that was a whole thought on my mind. Like, I always knew it. Like, I would never be like living with anybody before we got married. I'm just old-fashioned in that way. But yet the second he said, well, then marry me. And I said, okay. Wow, we just knew it was right. So anyways, there you have it. There's part 2. And maybe someday I can do like a part 3 and part 4. But hope you enjoyed that. And a reminder to please push the thumbs up like button if you did enjoy it, because YouTube will help spread my videos around more the more likes a video has. I'm learning more how YouTube works, and so again, I do appreciate thumbs up. And as always, thanks for watching.